another episode of All Things Considered Franchising, powered by Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com. I am your podcast host and president and founder of Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com. Scotty Milas here. All Things Considered Franchising is a podcast dedicated to the franchising industry and entrepreneurs, both individuals that are already entrepreneurs seeking to become entrepreneurs. And Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com is a organization consulting service that provides a free service to individuals that like to research and explore business ownership, helping you build a business model and introducing you to the opportunities that could fit. And I have a great guest with us today, somebody that I've known, I hate to say it this way, but when I was a young man.
We're both young.
And we both had color in our hair other than gray. And just somebody who is just well known in the industry, somebody who I consider to be a rock star, kind of a different element in franchising, and that is Paul Rocchio, who is vice president of development and member services for the International Franchise Associations. Hey, Paul, great to see you again.
Scotty, always a pleasure, man. Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity, man. Really do appreciate it. And it's funny, you just mentioned, my official title. I've been just telling people I'm the janitor here at IFA,
Well, in today's world, it's not the same as when we were younger and had
of
titles.
Course not.
Everybody does a little bit of everything these days.
Exactly.
That titles are misleading. But, Paul, it's a caveat to us speaking, and I'm glad you're here because we're coming off one of the most successful IFA conferences I think I can remember. And correct me if I'm wrong, over 3,500, probably close to 4,000 attendees.
Oh, yeah. We had about 4,200 attendees.
Wow.
I mean, it was record attendance by far.
And the International Franchise Association, the IFA, plays an integral part in the franchising space. Not so much for the political sense, but making sure that I like to simplify it and just say kind of those rules, regulations, ethics, and morals are being followed within the organization, both on the franchisee, franchisor side, and of course, handling any type of perception or negative publicity that franchising might get. And you've been with the IFA now, I think 25 years, if I'm correct. 24 years.
It was, not that I'm counting. It was 24 years. March 15th.
Right. So franchising has taken it's kind of a pendulum, I guess, an up and down at what you've seen in the last 24, 25 years. The state of the industry now, I think, is stronger than it's ever been, but it also has a lot of what I call little blimps in on the radar. So walk us through the strengths or what you're seeing in the industry and how the IFA is playing a role in making sure that the industry stays on this straight line, the straight and narrow, I call it, to again represent and be a backbone for franchisees and franchisors.
Listen, and I will tell you, in the 24 years that I've been involved in franchising, but through the associate, through my vantage point as an association hack, as I like to call it, because I moved to DC to go to graduate school, was bit by the political bug, worked on Capitol Hill, was a government relations, I was a lobbyist, moved over to IFA as a lobbyist to also build our political grassroots program, but then got kind of fed up with lobbying, but fell in love with franchising and moved over to membership because I love working with entrepreneurs, working with franchisors, franchisees, and the supplier community, what we call the franchise family, if you will. The one thing about IFA and our mission has never changed. We protect, enhance, and promote franchising day in, day out. And it, since the inception of IFA back in, the late 50s, but, officially 1960. And it was founded by Bill Rosenberg, the founder of Dunkin' Donuts. And I had the pleasure of knowing him the first few years I was here at IFA. And he would always tell the story about how he stood up from the table. He was with a group of, franchise founders at the time and said, threw down $100 and said, let's start this bleep association. And that's how we came into play. And it was because franchising was being looked at, and they were considering, the federal government was considering regulations to the business model.
Right.
And I'll tell you, things have just never really changed. I mean, as long as I've been here, we're always having to educate people about franchising. Nobody understands franchising. I mean, we're all in it. We breathe it day in and day out. But you talk to the general public, a lot of people, they just don't understand franchising, especially, people on Capitol Hill here in DC, or out at the state level or local level, whether it's, mayor's offices or, state legislators, the media, and also the regulators. I mean, we are always having to educate folks, and that's where the protection piece comes in. We are always protecting the business model. And I'll tell you, the business model has been, I don't want to make it sound like the sky's falling, but the business model has been under more of a direct threat in the past 10 years than it ever has in the history of at least IFA's existence. And the pendulum has shifted back really to the state side. There have been a number of things. Obviously, we jokingly refer to it as the the country of California, but California has some, the FAST Act, the joint employer, and then of course Arkansas, and my awesome colleague Jeff Hanscom. That was all last minute, and we pulled together some awesome panelists, and we were able to fight that thing, and we were very happy about that. Then there's a onerous bill in Arizona, but I was told that we're in good shape there. And then there's a onerous bill in New Jersey, but only focused on the hotel sector, but still, it's there. And then of course, on the regulatory side right now, listen, the FTC is they're looking to, they put out a request for comments on franchising, on the franchise rule, and there's going to be a hearing, and we're very involved with it, and we have some questions that we've asked some of our friends on Capitol Hill to ask during this hearing, and it just seems like we're always trying to be very open with everyone. And when I mean everyone, I mean whether it's the lawmakers or the regulators, and it just seems to me, and this is my opinion, my personal opinion, but it just seems like people are being a little, on the regulatory side, they're being kind of one-sided about things, and that just really concerns me, because we all know that franchising is a powerful tool, cog in the economic wheel of the U.S. economy. And not only is it a very strong, over 800 billion directly related to to franchising, but at the end of the day, it provides the opportunity for people to realize the American dream. Exactly. I mean, we all know, we've heard the countless stories, whether it's people pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, or people coming to this country and mopping or sweeping the floor, and now they're multi-unit, multi-branded franchisees. And not that money's everything, but they're multimillionaires. But and then it gives people the opportunity to be their own boss, right? We always say that, be your own boss. That's what franchising does.
Let me ask you this, Paul, and it's interesting because you're absolutely right. The pushback on franchising seems to be getting a little bit louder and louder each year, although right now it's still just a loud roar. The roar is getting a little bit louder. But has the IFA looked at and kind of put the finger on it, on why the loud roar, why the pushback? Is it coming from the independent entrepreneur, the big corporations? What is it that people fear about the franchising industry and the labor practices and the independence that franchisees have that are following a model? I mean, these are independent business owners. They own their business. They can wake up in the morning and sell their business. They just have to follow the model. So what is the reason for the pushback? Is there any one thing that stands out?
Honestly, and from my vantage point, it's a couple of things. The SEIU, the unions, they are very, they have deeper pockets than we do. And when I say we, I mean I mean IFA. We are a very small trade association. I mean, we are not as, we don't have the kind of revenue that, National Restaurant Association has, or the Hotel Motel Lodger and National Retail Federation. But, when it comes to franchising, we're it. And, we represent over 300 different verticals that happen to franchise. Not everybody in those verticals are franchisors, but those that are, they play with IFA, because, for various reasons, obviously. But I will say that the SEIU is looking at their pockets. I mean, look, the world has changed for the unions. Everything is a service-related economy.
Right.
And what's the biggest sector? Everything in franchising is practically service-related, right? And so they're going after franchising, and they're not going to stop. So we're seeing it from there. And then, listen, we all know franchising is truly a relationship business. The relationship between the potential franchisee and the franchisor, the existing franchisee and the franchisor, and then the vendor community, whether it's the specific vendor for the franchisee or if it's a vendor for the franchisee franchisor. But it's, we call it the three-legged stool of franchising. I don't love that analogy, but but at the end of the day, you can't have a balanced stool without a franchisor, franchisee, and supplier, and that's what makes up our membership. But at the end of the day, like any relationship, I always jokingly say, franchise relationships last longer than most marriages. But with that said, nothing's perfect, and there's always going to be issues with franchisees and franchisors sometimes, and they're not going to be happy. And I don't like to use the word disgruntled franchisee or blame it all on the franchisor or the franchisee. But yes, there's litigation. We all know you can't have franchising without the attorneys, and all my good friends in franchising who are attorneys. I mean, they get it. I mean, the largest segment within our supplier membership are, is the attorney, the legal the legal vertical, if you will. But when I look back over, when I started here was, a federal franchise relationship bill. Iowa there was a big bill in Iowa, and that was before I came over to IFA. And then we had a federal bill, which was Coble-Conyers, and it was truly a franchise relationship legislation. And then every other bill that had been introduced almost since then, it was always because of, there was an issue with the relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. And you've got somebody who's unhappy, and that somebody who's unhappy has a connection, a friend, a relative who is a legislator, and they're like, you've got to help me here. And that is practically how every single piece of legislation that is negative to franchising and the business model has come into play.
Well, I think also the environment, the environment today is a little bit more hostile when it comes to sitting down and, kind of hashing things out. You go back into the 80s and 90s, people would sit around with a bottle of whiskey and just say, hey, look, let's work this out, hammer. Nobody's leaving. But today it's, I'm going to get my lawyer, you're going to get your lawyer. We're going to throw darts at each other. And, so the environment tends to be a little bit more hostile in resolving issues. But the bottom line is that franchising is still a very strong element within the entrepreneur community. I mean, it is still a reliable option for people that 100%. Want to get into business. And that's not to take 100%. Away the independent, but there's just, change is always good. But unfortunately, there are people that always want change. They're not looking at it as an industry. They're looking at it as an individual. What's best for me, not best for the industry.
Exactly. And you're 100% right. You're 100% right. I mean, the art of compromise, at least in DC, from my perspective, the art of compromise is gone. It is 100% gone. And I mean, look, to your point, and I'm dating myself, but you'll get this. I don't know if all your viewers will, but Orrin Hatch and Ted Kennedy, two
Yes.
totally opposites. But guess what? They would get together. Now, Orrin Hatch wouldn't have a drink, but Ted would, and they would get together. They would always hash things out. They would compromise.
Yep.
And there are some folks up on the Hill that do that now, but it's just not the way it used to be. It's so contentious. It really is.
Well, I spent almost 10 years down in DC working for the news media as part of the White House press corps. So, I remember those days,
better than most people.
Yeah. Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan.
Exactly.
You could disagree with the politics of, whatever side of the table you're on, but those guys would sit down and they wouldn't leave a room, and they'd polish off 3 or 4 cigars and a bottle of whiskey. And, they would have next morning you'd read about it. Hey, we worked it out. So, there wasn't the name calling. So the environment's a little hostile. But, one of the things that fascinated me most about the IFA conference that, took place recently in Las Vegas was the amount of new franchisors, new concepts. I mean, I had Edith Weissman as a guest a couple of weeks ago, and, president of Fran Data, and we were discussing this, and I'm curious to get your take and the IFI take, but I have never seen the explosion the way it is of people that are looking to franchise their business and now franchising it and offering it as a franchise. To me, it's exploding numbers.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I haven't seen the final stats on our convention, but my colleague Alan, who oversees conferences, we had about over 600 franchise brands that were represented at the convention. And that was actually a record number. But we're still kind of crunching numbers and verifying that. But yes, I mean, leading up to every convention. So like one of the things I've, historically always kind of overseen is our new member, first time attendee, orientation and reception at convention. And not only do we have a lot of new franchisee and supplier members coming into IFA, but there are always a ton of people who are, they might be with Dunkin' brands, but but they're either brand new to franchising or they've never been to the convention before, and there's so many people, in that bucket as well. And that's, like, I always wonder, are they all going to come to the, to the reception, or the, because I have ambassadors, longstanding members of IFA to help educate these folks. And, I would jokingly say, get them addicted to the Kool-Aid, but, and we had like almost 1,000 people in that ballroom for the new member first time attending reception.
We did. Yep.
And, it's just fascinating. And, I mean, and this, I mean, people reach out to me, every day, every week, they want to franchise their business. And listen, I try to talk them out of it, because I'm like, it's not easy. It's not cheap.
No, nothing's
and
easy.
You're not in the, the restaurant business anymore. You're in the franchise business. And if you can't comfortably change your hat and put on the hat of being a franchisor, know what that means, educate yourself, continue. I mean, we learn something new every single day. I'm still learning something new every day.
Yeah, there's a policy there's a policy. You're running your business based on a manual policy operations. It's not like you can't walk into a independent. It's not like walking into your independent store and saying, "Hey, Joe, that's not how I want you to do it." It's a different approach, but it's a great way to expand your business model. Open multiple
100%
units without having all the, the wheels turning and all the moving parts. One of the questions, and we touched on this, one of the first things, we're running out of little time here. We're talking to Paul Rocchio, who's Vice President of Development and Member Services at the International Franchise Association.
The janitor.
The janitor. But, one of the questions that I get about, and especially talking to people that are looking to get into or explore business ownership for the first time, investigate franchising, is educating people about franchising. That it's not that you just give a guy a franchise check, a franchise fee, and they give you the keys to the door and they do everything else for you. So if I was going to direct somebody to the IFE, and say, hey, here's a great spot to learn about franchising or what franchising is all about. Is there any certain spot on the IFE website or anything I can point them to that helps them help educate people that are looking to get into franchising
Oh, good.
for the first time?
100%. So, our website, shameless plug, franchise.org. We have a lot of free and helpful information on all aspects. And so on the website, if you just scroll down, you're going to see a number of tabs like the FTC guide to buying a franchise, and I listen, Scotty, you get this. I mean, I always tell people, always do your due diligence. There's so much stuff out there. There's so many books out there, but you have to familiarize yourself with all aspects of franchising. And people, like the potential franchisee who reaches out to me or somebody who's interested in becoming a franchisee, there's a number of things that I will point them to. But I always tell them, you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your homework. Just make sure you're familiar. You don't have to be an expert, but just make sure you're familiar with what FDD is and what each item within the FDD is, and the franchise agreement, and that you could actually talk to existing franchisees or franchisees that recently left the system. Ask if they have an item 19. What's that? And I tell them, it's like, there's so many things that
I tell my clients, Paul, that if you want to be a successful franchisee, and eventually become maybe a multi-unit, multi-brand operator, you have to learn how to ask questions. If you're not the type 100%. Of person who likes to ask and get information from other people, you are not going to be successful in franchising. You can't do this alone because franchising is a partnership. And the beauty of the franchising industry and bringing in organizations like the IFA is people want to share information. I mean, you attend the conferences or the workshops that the IFA puts on. It's amazing how people are willing to help other franchisees out or people that are looking to get into the industry for the first time. It's amazing.
100%. You're preaching. I mean, I say that to people all the time. Of course, you and I have been around forever, but, people love to give back to the people coming up the ladder behind them. I see it. We see it all the time. And there's competitors within each vertical, but franchising is franchising. Whether you're trying to fill hotel beds, flipping hamburgers, switching out mufflers, franchising is all the same. You're all dealing with the same issues. So, people love to give back to the people coming up the ladder behind them. And I tell, especially, startup and emerging brands, there is no reason to recreate the wheel. Trust me, every problem that has already happened, and people within the IFA community and the franchising community educate you, help you, teach you, tell you how they screwed up a million times and what to do and what not to do. And I mean, we see that all the time, right? All the time.
Right.
And that's what's so great about franchise. We call it the franchise family. I mean, people love to just give back to people coming up the ladder behind them all the time.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking to Paul Rocchio, Vice President, Development and Member Services for the International Franchise Association. Paul, it's it's always great to chat. I wish we had more time. We could probably go on for hours, just telling funny stories. And, I mean, we could probably all write a book about things that have happened or we heard about in the industry, all good things. But we appreciate, at least I appreciate all the efforts that you put into the IFA and helping people. If anybody had any questions about franchising, okay to email you. Is there?
Of course. Email me, call me. I'm here in the office every day. I always tell people I didn't last long during COVID working from home. My family voted me off the island. I was back in the office by July 6th of 2020. And, I'm still here Monday through Friday for the most part.
Well, Paul, thanks so much for sharing some time with me. This is Scotty Milas, your podcast host for All Things Considered Franchising, and also powered by Scott Milas, franchisecoach.com. Anyone has any questions, you can email me at scott@scottmilasfranchisecoach.com or give me a shout at 860-751-9126. I do use a phone. I still talk on the phone. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions about looking at franchising or exploring franchise opportunities. Paul, it's been great. I wish you and your family best to the kids in their decision process.
Thank you, Scotty. Appreciate it, buddy.
And we will catch up. We'll catch up again
Soon, I hope. Yeah,
right,
definitely,
Scotty. Thanks very much.
Hey, well, buddy. Bye now.